Thanks for joining part 2 of the Planning Analytics to Decision Optimization demo movie. In part 1, I illustrated how planning analytics and decision optimization are used together in a solution. In this video, I'll describe the steps needed for this integration. One of the main principles of the data exchange between planning analytics and decision optimization is the association of project data assets to planning analytics views, be it a TM1 native view or a planning analytics workspace view. So I'll start by opening an existing project in the Watson Studio environment. The project contains 3 types of assets: a connection, which defines the communication to the TM1 server; 2, a number, about 11, data assets, which enable decision optimization to use the data from planning analytics or deliver results back to planning analytics. Again, each data asset connects to a TM1 or PA view. Third, the decision optimization experiment, which is the development version of the actual optimization model. So I'll select and open the connection.
The PA connector defines the properties needed to connect to the Planning Analytics TM1 database, including the URL, the authentication type, the username and password. And for this, in this example, we're using the PA Cloud, and we're using the non-interactive automation account. If you need one, please log a ticket and request one. Next, we'll look at the data asset. We'll open one here, and we'll see the data asset is merely a connection to a TM1 views, and it's going to have a rectangular or flattened perspective. And so you see this is the information on the coal and the gas, the different generators, different values, generating capacity that's being sent from TM1. When creating the data asset, the user simply specifies the TM1 server, cube, and view to associate with any asset. Next, we'll open up the decision optimization experiment. This point is still in development time, as opposed to deployment is a runtime. So open up the project, and we see that there are, results that are delivered back. But we'll take a look at the data that is used to prepare those results here. And you'll see that looks exactly like we just saw with the data assets, because these were the data assets that have been used to prepare the data. If you want to add data assets, just hit the Add Data button on the top right of the screen, and you can select an existing data asset. Next, we'll look at the Python model, or the model that we've used for the decision optimization experiment. And you'll see in here it contains the Python information that uses our data assets as input and reports back the results to other data assets. Once we're happy with the model, the DO experiment model, we're going to right-click or click on that ellipse icon, and we'll get the submenu. And it's going to allow us to, we'll pick the last one. We picked the last one, the Save for Deployment option. And this is going to allow you to move your experiment from design time in Watson Studio into kind of a runtime in Watson Machine Learning. Okay, in our example, we've already created the deployment space. So we're just going to select the deployment space for this project from the menu, and we're going to open up the deployment space. The deployment space, your own name, better than we just use the server name here. In addition to promoting the model, we've added the individual data assets to the deployment space also. So now the model's been deployed to kind of runtime and Watson machine learning, as well as the various data assets, as you can see. Okay, now that we have the model promoted to our deployment space and a deployment created, we have to create a job to execute that deployment. And through the magic of video, actually our deployment name has changed. So the last one we had was a server name, and this one is a different name, a unit commitment name. But it's the same process. We're going to create a new job by hitting that icon. We'll give the job a name. Remember, the job is just what's going to run the deployment. Most of these we set by default. We compute the computing resources you will set. Schedule is going to be non-scheduled. We're gonna tell it to launch by connecting it to an action button, and then we need to go through the process of setting both the inputs data assets as well as the results data assets that we are using to communicate with PATM1. And it's a bit repetitive because we've already done this, but we need to specify in the job which data assets will be used, and that's what Lee is doing here. You can see there's two data assets referring to the KPI view, and we don't need both data assets. So it's common, and it's okay not to include all the data assets, only the ones that you need to either for bringing data from TM1 or delivering results to TM1. We'll complete the process here of creating the job. Now we're just gonna execute it to make sure it's working well. So we'll be brought into the execution running part, seeing the job console, and we see that this is the job that we've created. It's starting process now, and we can see the execution of that. Now in the next part, a future part of the video, we're gonna trigger this execution not from this kind of control panel, but from Planning Analytics, an action button itself. Okay, let's summarize before we go to the next step. So far, we've created a project in Watson Studio. We've created the Planning Analytics connector. We've created a number of data assets, both for delivering values and receiving the results. We've created a decision optimization experiment. So my project now has a connector, the data asset, and the DO experiments. We've tested the decision optimization experiment. And once we're happy with the experiment, we then promoted it to a deployment space, really converted it from a design time project to a runtime deployment. We've created a WML job. That job is going to execute or run the deployed model. And we've seen the job can be run in the console, and we're going to connect it to Planning Analytics. Next, I'll show how to associate the deployment with Planning Analytics, both in the Planning Analytics administration and in the action button sense, because we want to associate that execution with an action button. This is a Planning Analytics Cloud deployment. So I'm just going to go in and into Planning Analytics, and I'll select Administration. And then we're going to go to the Integration tab. And in there we see integration parameters that we've used for the example we showed earlier. I'm going to go through and blank these parameters out and show you how to complete each one. But before I do, I just wanted to point out that this information is in the Planning Analytics for Watson documentation, the Information Center, and it's going to specify gives you more information on about the service URL, the API key, deployment ID space, and the certificate. So this information is there for your assistance. Okay, so let's go ahead and clear out the fields for the integration. In case you may notice that the integration becomes inactive. We already had an active one, so yours may become inactive. Okay, so we're going to start by finding the service URL. It is easy as going to our project area in the Cloud Pak for Data as a Service Watson Studio environment. Cutting, you don't see it, but we cut and paste. We'll cut and paste the URL from the browser, and we'll just prefix it by the API. Next, we're going to set the API key. We're going to go into the Cloud Pak for Data as a Service menu, and we're going to select AIM, log into the IBM Cloud, and select API keys. And here we're going to create, we have a few already, but we're going to create a new API key. We're just going to copy that API key in this process, and we're going to paste it into the integration screen in Planning Analytics Administration. Okay, the next piece of information we need is the deployment space ID. Go into the project or go into the deployments for the project. We'll click on the deployment space, which we created earlier. And in there is a deployment ID. We're going to copy that and we're going to paste that into our integration in Planning Analytics. Lastly, we'll copy and paste the certificate for the connection to the Planning Analytics workspace component. We're going to make sure the URL is prefaced by API if we didn't already add that in. Go ahead and we'll test this configuration out. Okay, successful. So now in Planning Analytics Workspace, or Planning Analytics Administration, we've configured the integration to Watson Machine Learning for our decision optimization deployment. Step is to associate the deployment job that we've registered in Planning Analytics Administration with an action button, and this is pretty straightforward. We're going to edit the book. We've assumed that we've created the book just like we normally would. We've created and added the action button, and there's an additional tab. In the additional tab, you're simply going to select the jobs that are in the deployment space that we just associated with Planning Analytics through the integration tab. A user is able to interact with an action button, and when they select the action button, it's going to kick off that job, and you see where there's a toast message that indicates the job was started and executed successfully, and we can see that the job, if we go back to the console, we see the job is in the console and it's running in the console here. So that gives our user the ability to run Watson Studio or Watson Machine Learning jobs directly from within Planning Analytics to use in their solutions.
can go and find the deployment space ID. So here is the deployment space that we have here. Once this loads, we choose the space that we want to link PAW with. So we'll do the unit commitment space. And we'll go to manage. And here the space GUID under general. Just copy this, paste it in. Getting the certificate formally. That's something we will have to identify, figure out the safest way to do that. But now if we test this, it'll test with success. And it didn't work. That in there. Now the trailing slash can't be there for this to work. You have to delete the trailing slash. In here you can generate the API key, so let's just delete this one here. Okay, so you come in here. You can create a new API key if you don't have one already. And we'll copy that. And then we'll come back to admin, add the API key for the deployment space ID. we go into the deployment that you want. So unit commitment space is the one that we want to connect with, to connect Paul with. It'll end up listing all the jobs that are inside of this deployment space, and you grab the space GUID and you put that there, and then you grab the SSL certificate. Not sure how you get the official SSL certificate formally, like how clients get this certificate. But, maybe sort that out. We'll come back here and put the SSL certificate and test, and then that will test it fine. And oh, sorry, I forgot to put the API prefix here. So you put the API prefix in front of whatever you'd copied over here. So sometimes this URL would have like an EU-DE inside of it. So we can go ahead and test that again. And this will test it fine. All right, let me do that again because there's an interruption there. All right, so this will test it fine. And then if you were to add a slash on this, for example, it wouldn't actually test. So we can't have the slash there. All right, that's it. And then you can go ahead and set up your action buttons and